Okay, we continue today our studies of the timeline of Deuteronomy. I've always thought that Deuteronomy was pretty much 40 years, but as I have been studying it, I have realized that it's beyond the 40 years, Deuteronomy, because a lot of things happened in the book of Deuteronomy. Yeah, they come out of Egypt, and they make it to the Sinai, to Mount Sinai, and they're there for about a year, and then they wander around the wilderness for another 38 years, and it's approximately 40 years by the time they're ready to go into the promised land, that they are east of the Jordan, east of Jericho. But the promises or the things that the Lord tells Israel during that time period goes beyond them crossing over the promises of Deuteronomy, the curses of Deuteronomy. They continue. In Deuteronomy, we see, like we saw last week, there was curses and blessings. And remember, they amened the cursings. And the blessings, they didn't really respond too much to the blessings. But as we keep studying the life of the children of Israel, we see that they suffered through all the curses that God promised them. During the time of the wilderness, all those curses came upon them eventually. And even during the time of Deuteronomy, God mentions that they were going to request a king from him, which is something that eventually happened in the time of Samuel. So the promises, the future of what is revealed in the book of Deuteronomy continues all the way to the captivity of Babylon. I always considered the book of Deuteronomy just 40 years, from Egypt to the land. But no, it's really from captivity to captivity. From captivity out of Egypt back to captivity in Babylon. The book of Deuteronomy covers all that, as far as the literal things that happened during those 40 years, and then what God promised was going to happen. So it's interesting, very interesting, the book of Deuteronomy. But today we will consider the cities of refuge. Okay? The cities of refuge. The purpose, why God set up cities of refuge. What was the purpose of them? How did they operate? And is there a future fulfillment of the cities of refuge for Israel? And is there an application for us as far as the cities of refuge is concerned? Okay? So hopefully within the next 2 hours we'll cover that. Okay? But to understand the purpose of the cities of refuge, we need to understand a law that God gave to Noah. And we have to go to Genesis chapter 9, where God gave law, orders, commands to Noah. This is after the flood. Genesis 9, God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. And he puts the fear in all the animals so they can run away from Noah and from man, because now man is given the privilege to go and hunt them, to eat them. Okay? So we see that here. Verse 3, every moving thing that lives shall be meat for you. Or verse 5, this is the command that's going to concern us today regarding the cities of refuge. Verse 5 and 6, it says, and surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. Okay? So what he's saying here, God is implementing this commandment for mankind, that even if a beast or an animal, a wild animal or domesticated, if it kills a man, that animal has to be put to death. Okay? If a man, by his hand, kills another man, that man has to be put to death. Okay? That's what God's implementing here. And then he says in verse 5, the last part of verse 5, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. In other words, the brother of the man that got slain or killed by another man, his next of kin was responsible to kill the man that killed his brother. Okay? Life for life. That was of God. If a man killed another man, his next of kin, it would be their responsibility to avenge the death of his kin. A life for a life. Okay?
So a lot of things that happen in this lifetime, a lot of they get it from the Bible, right?
Oh yeah. Capital punishment. Yeah.
Because all this is still like goes on in certain areas.
Yeah, it does. And in reality, God never repealed that law. He gave it to Noah, and he incorporated it into the law of Moses. If we go to Exodus 21, this is after the law of Moses, because God gave the law to Moses in Exodus 20. In Exodus 21, it's God continuing to give the children of Israel his judgments and his statutes and the other laws. Okay, and in Exodus 21, starting with verse 12, he is now incorporating this into the law of Moses. He says in verse 12, he that smiteth a man so that he dies shall be surely put to death. And if a man lie not in wait, but God deliver him into his hands, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. But if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from mine altar, that he may die. Okay, so God incorporating this law that he had given to Noah, a life for a life, into the law of Moses, that if a man smites another man, or slews, or slains, that man surely must be put to death. Verse 13 says, but if a man lie not in wait, so if it's not premeditated, okay, if a man lie not in wait, but God delivers him unto his hand, but God allows that life to be taken, God says, I will appoint thee a place where he can flee to. Okay?
You know what he showed me about those cities, bro?
Uh-huh.
The mercy of God.
Yeah. But if a man come presumptuously, or already has a plan upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, then that man will surely be separated from the altar of God and put to death. Okay? And what's so important about the blood? Yeah. The life is in the blood. According to Leviticus 17:11. The life is in the blood. For the life of the flesh is in the blood. And I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that maketh atonement for the souls. Okay? That was the reason for the sacrifices in the Old Testament. It was the blood that atoned for the sins of the people, but it was temporary. That's why they had to do it continually, over and over. If you jump to verse 14 in Leviticus 17, again says, for it is the life of the flesh, the blood. The blood of it is for the life thereof. And again it goes on to say, for the life of all flesh is the blood thereof. So the life is in the blood, and it's a life for life. God implemented that from the beginning through Noah and incorporated it into the law of Moses. And then he establishes the need for these cities of refuge in case somebody loses a life and it was accidental. That's the purpose of the cities of refuge. It's for the protection of accidental or unpremeditated murder. Okay? God provided these cities of refuge so that the innocent person can find refuge while he is awaiting his trial. Okay? That innocent blood be not shed in the land. Because if he killed a person accidentally, and the next of kin is going to come and kill he who is innocent, then the next of kin is killing innocent blood. And the innocent blood would defile the land. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 4, and we see that verse 41 of Deuteronomy chapter 4, and this is still, Moses is still on the east side of the Jordan River. Verse 41 says, "And Moses severed 3 cities on this side of Jordan towards the sunrise, that the slayer," verse 42, "that the slayer might flee thereto, which should kill his neighbor unawares, and hate him not in times past, and that fleeing unto one of these cities he might live." And then 3 cities are named, 3 cities that were established as cities of refuge east of the Jordan. I guess I'll try and this is like the Mediterranean Sea, the Euphrates River, and over here the river of Egypt. We're going to say this is the Promised Land. We have the Sea of Galilee, we have the Jordan, and then we have the Dead Sea. So before Moses crossed over the Jordan, he establishes 3 cities on this side of the Jordan as cities of refuge. 3 cities as he was commanded by the Lord. Here, he names the cities, here in verse 43, Bezer in the wilderness in the plain country of the Reubenites, and Ramoth in Gilead of the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan of the Manassites. So it's Golan. Probably familiar with that name, Golan Heights. And then the other one was named Ramoth and Bezer. And they were all east of the Jordan. Because before Moses crossed over to take the Promised Land, he had already conquered some Amorite kings on this side, and he had divided that land among some of the tribes, the Reubenites, the Gadites, and Manasseh. But let's go to Deuteronomy 19, starting with verse 1. It says, these cities that were appointed as cities of refuge, they were operated by the Levites, okay? The tribe of Levites, okay? Deuteronomy 19, verse 1, "When the Lord thy God has cut off the nations, whose land the Lord thy God giveth thee, and thou succeedest them, and dwellest in their cities and in their houses, thou shalt separate 3 cities for thee in the midst of that land, which the Lord thy God gives thee to possess." So again, now Moses is telling the people that once they cross over, they should separate 3 more cities on the other side of the Jordan. And they're spaced out in a way where the cities are very accessible from anywhere in the Promised Land. They're easy to get to. The roads are wide, leading up to the cities. Okay?
You're talking about salvation, really?
It is, because the cities of refuge, as far as the children of Israel, if they needed a city of refuge, they were running for their life. If you needed a city of refuge in that time, you had to run for your life. to get into the city of refuge. Deuteronomy 19. And in verse 3 it says, Thou shalt prepare thee a way, and divide the coast of thy lands, which the Lord thy God gives thee to inherit, into 3 parts, that every slayer may flee there without any problems. Okay? So it's divided into 3. The northern part, the central, and the southern part of Israel, into this 6 cities. 3 on the east side, 3 on the west side of the Jordan. Verse 4, And this is the case of the slayer, which shall flee hither, that he may live, whosoever killeth his neighbor ignorantly, whom he hated not in time past, as when a man goes into the woods with his neighbor to hew wood, to cut wood, and his hand hatchet, or his axe, his hand fetches a stroke with the axe to cut down a tree, and the head slips from the helve and lightens upon his neighbor, that he dies, he shall flee unto one of those cities and live. Okay? So if 2 people are out there collecting wood, and one of the axe head is loose and comes off and hits the other in the head, and he dies accidentally, the man that killed the other accidentally had to flee, had to go find a city of refuge. That was the law. If he wanted to live, because of the next of kin, they were going to be enraged, upset. They just lost a loved one, and the law permitted them to avenge the death. Verse 6, Lest the avenger of the blood pursue the slayer, while his heart is hot, while he's still enraged because of the loss of his kin, and he overtakes the slayer because the way is long, and slay him, whereas he was not worthy of death, inasmuch as he hated him not in time past. Wherefore I command thee, saying, Thou shalt separate 3 cities for thee, for this purpose. Okay? That's why God commanded Moses to separate those 3 cities, just like he had done over here. And on this side, we have Kadesh, the city of Kadesh. Remember last week, Shechem became a city of refuge, and this one is Hebron. Those are the 6 cities of refuge that the Bible names.
Can you read 8 and 9, bro?
Of 19? Yeah. If thou shalt keep all these commandments to do them, which I command thee this day, to love the Lord thy God, and to walk ever in his ways, then shalt thou add 3 cities more for thee, besides this 3, that innocent blood be not shed in thy land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance, and so blood be upon thee. So that was the purpose of the 6 cities, so that innocent blood would not be shed. Okay? That was the main purpose. Keep that in mind. So that innocent blood would not be shed. The law was life for life. But if it was accidental, then you had to go through a trial. And yeah, there was grace there. There was mercy, God. Okay? And besides, like we read earlier, God, in the case of accidental death, God allowed it to happen. Okay? Accidents will happen here on earth. God allows them to happen. But that doesn't mean that he's guilty of murder. So that's why God provided the cities of refuge. And if you go to Joshua 20, just for reference, Joshua 20 names the 6 cities of refuge because it was Joshua, the one that got the people eventually over the Jordan, and all the cities are defined there in the book of Joshua in chapter 20. What does refuge mean? Shelter, sanctuary? We get the idea. The slayer, the one that killed a person either intentionally or accidentally, he's called the slayer. He is the one that deprives or takes away life. And then we have the avenger.
Sound like a vampire movie.
Right? And the avenger takes vengeance on behalf of the one that was slain. Okay? The avenger takes vengeance. So now that we've settled that, let's go to Numbers 35. And we'll start with verse... Again, we'll confirm here in the beginning of chapter 35 that God separated the tribe of Levi unto himself. They had no inheritance of land. Okay? But out of the 12 tribes of Israel, they were given cities to dwell in, the Levites. A total of 48 cities they were given from the 12 tribes. And from those 48 cities, 6 of them became cities of refuge. Okay? So they were operated totally by the Levites, the priestly tribe. Okay? And if we go to, let's start with verse 10 of chapter 35. It says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them," this is the Lord speaking to Moses, When ye be come over Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall appoint you cities to be cities of refuge for you, that the slayer may flee hither, which killeth any person at unawares or accidentally. And they shall be unto you cities for refuge from the avenger, that the manslayer die not until he stand before the congregation in judgment. Okay? So if he made it to a city of refuge, then there would be a trial from the elders of the city. The avenger would have to come, and then there would be an investigation. Was there a weapon used? How did he die? How did it happen? Did they have fight earlier, or did they hate each other? You know, stuff like it is. Yeah, exactly. So then it was up to the congregation to come up with a judgment, whether the slayer was guilty of premeditated murder or not, or involuntary manslaughter. Okay? And verse 13, "And of these cities which you shall give, 6 cities shall you have for refuge." 14, "You shall give 3 cities on the side of the Jordan, and 3 cities shall be given in the land of Canaan, which shall be cities of refuge. These 6 cities shall be a refuge both for the children of Israel and for the stranger and for the sojourner among them." So the cities were not just for Israel. They were for anyone that needed refuge. Okay? God had never turns anyone away. Anyone needs refuge was welcomed to the city of refuge. That everyone that killeth any person unawares may flee hither. 16, "And if he smite him with an instrument of iron so that he die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death." Life for life. Okay? Same thing in 17. "And if he smite him with throwing a stone wherewith he may die, and he died, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death." 18, "Or if he smite him with a hand weapon of wood wherewith he may die, and he died, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death." And 19, "The avenger of blood himself shall slay the murderer. When he meets him, he shall slay him." Okay? Life for a life. Eye for an eye. And verse 20, "But if he thrust him of hatred, or hurled at him by laying at wait, that he die, or in enmity smite him with his hand, that he die, he that smote him shall surely be put to death, for he is a murderer. The avenger of blood shall slay the murderer when he meets him." Okay? Again, same thing. If it was premeditated with a weapon or a rock, or even with the hands, and it was premeditated murder, he deserved to die. And the avenger, the next of kin, had the right to take his life. A life for a life. That was the law. Okay, verse 22. But if he thrust him suddenly without enmity, accidentally, okay, or have cast upon him anything without laying of weight, no premeditation, or with any stone wherewith a man may die, seeing him not, and cast it upon him that he die, and was not his enemy, neither sought his harm, then the congregation shall judge between the slayer and the revenger of blood, according to the judgments. Okay? So there had to be an investigation, a process, just like there is today, to see if it was premeditated or planned or accidental. And 25, and the congregation shall deliver the slayer out of the hand of the avenger of blood, and the congregation shall restore him to the city of refuge, whither he was fled, and he shall abide in it until the death of the high priest, which was anointed with the holy oil. Okay? So if the slayer was found innocent of murder, it was an accident, then he would be allowed to stay in the city of refuge. And he had to stay there until the high priest died. Okay? Remember that. Until the high priest died. 26. Okay. But if the slayer shall at any time come without the border of the city of his refuge, whither he was fled, and the avenger of blood find him without the borders of the city of his refuge, and the revenger of blood kills the slayer, he shall not be guilty of blood. Okay? So the slayer that was allowed to stay in the city, he had to stay within the borders. If he was caught outside, the avenger could take his life, and he would not be guilty of innocent blood, because he had to stay. He had to be obedient. Stay in the shelter, in the refuge. Yeah. Had to stay.
So even if he wasn't guilty on purpose, he still had to stay?
He had to stay.
Because if he left, they could still kill him.
Yeah. Until the high priest died. That was his freedom. If he was a young man and the high priest was old man, he could still have some freedom. But if the high priest was a young man and the slayer was an old man, he's probably going to live the rest of his life in the city of refuge.
Doesn't it symbolize Christ, that after he died?
Yes, it all symbolizes. That's where we're going to. You all are seeing the picture. Okay, the high priest dies. He has to stay within. It's all types and shadows. Okay, but don't get too ahead of me. So if the revenger of blood found him outside the borders of the city, he could take his life and he would not be guilty of innocent blood because the slayer disobeyed. Okay, 28, because he should have remained in the city of his refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the slayer shall return into the land of his possession. 29, so these things shall be for a statute of judgment unto you throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Okay, this is given unto Israel and to their generations. 30, whoso killeth any person, the murderer shall be put to death by the mouth of witnesses. Witnesses, plural. One person could not put another person to death just by, word of mouth or one witness. No, it had to be witnesses. But one witness shall not testify against any person to cause him to die. So it's out of the mouth of two or three. Okay, remember that also. Moreover, 31, moreover, ye shall take no satisfaction for the life of a murderer, which is guilty of death, but he shall surely be put to death. So even if the murderer has plenty of money and he wants to buy his freedom, no, God says no. Don't have pity. Don't feel sorry for him. Okay? It's a life for a life. And if we go to 2 Kings, 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 4, it tells us that there was no pardon for murderers. Okay? It was a law of God. A life for a life. There's no pardon. No matter who you are. If you kill a man premeditated, by rage or by hatred, there was no pardon. You had to lose your life. That was the law of God. No pardon. Okay? No, right? No insanity here. So was that was kind of like an unpardonable sin? Right? Yeah. If you kill somebody, you had to give your life. There was no redemption for a murderer. You could not bring a sacrifice. You could not pay your way out of the city. Yeah. And if we go to 1 John 5:16, 1 John 5:16 talks about sin unto death and sin not unto death. Okay? So there were certain sins that if you committed them, you were going to die. That was it. Okay?
But it was under law.
Under law, yes. It's all under law. 1 John 5:16. If any man see his brother sin a sin which is not unto death, he shall ask, and he shall give him life for them that sin not unto death. There is a sin unto death. I do not say that he shall pray for it. Okay? So there's a sin unto death and a sin not unto death. And murder was a sin unto death. There's no redemption, no pardon for that. Okay? Verse 31. Moreover, you should take no satisfaction for the life of a murderer, which is guilty of death. If he committed death, he's going to lose his life. That's the way it was. 32, and you shall take no satisfaction for him that is fled to the city of refuge, that he should come again to dwell in the land until the death of the priest. So don't try to acquit him or do anything to get him out of the city of refuge once he's been already judged and allowed to stay there until the death of the high priest. No freedom until the death of the high priest. Verse 33, so you shall not pollute the land wherein you are, for blood, it defiles the land. And the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. Okay? Y'all get that? 33, so you shall not pollute the land wherein you are, for blood, it defiles the land. And the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. 34. Defile not therefore the land which you shall inhabit, wherein I dwell, for the Lord dwells among the children of Israel. So it's specifically about the land, the promised land, God's land, Israel. And God's going to dwell with them, and he's telling them, do not defile the land. Okay? So the cities, going back to the 6 cities of refuge, we named them earlier, and well, they're on the board, yeah. And each name of each city has something to do with our Lord Jesus Christ, the meaning of the cities. Okay? 6 cities. 6 is the number of what? Of man. 6 cities for man to seek refuge. Okay? For example, Kadesh means to be consecrated, to be holy. That's what that word Kadesh means. It was a city of refuge, but it meant consecrated, holy, a sanctuary. Shechem, the city we talked about last week, the name means to be sustained, like in shoulders, strong shoulders, to sustain something on shoulders. Hebron means to have fellowship, to come together. That's what Hebron means. Golan means to rejoice, to be full of joy. Ramoth means to exalt. the exalted one. And Bezer means to be fortified or stronghold. So we see that the names of each city, we can find the meaning of that in the attributes of Jesus Christ. Again, a type, a shadow of what was to come.